Hello everybody, welcome to For the Cut. The aim of this video is to highlight how Akira Kurosawa achieved complete coverage of the following scene and how he did this without a single cut and with a completely motionless, static single take. Coverage typically requires a wide shot to give a geographical sense of who and what is in the scene. So Kurosawa started this scene fairly typically with a wide view of this waiting room. Now if we take a closer look, Kurosawa has strategically placed within this wide at least 3 points of interest for the viewer's eye. That first point of interest is the hand holding a newspaper. This comes as no surprise as this is the largest, brightest focal point on the screen. The second point of interest, and perhaps the most important, hence why it's placed in the middle of the screen, is the lead character himself. The composition of the shot guides the audience's eye to view him in a fairly close-up medium. The third point of interest, which is probably the least important due to being the furthest away from the screen, is the two extras sat waiting in the background. One point to quickly mention is the triangle formation. Kurosawa often employs this in his compositional arrangements of an image. What this is 3 focal points that allows the viewer's eye to wander the entirety of the screen. You'll see how he uses this technique to allow for full coverage without having to move the camera or to cut shots together from various setups. As the scene moves along, the man with the newspaper takes a seat opposite the lead. This smartly inserts a natural two-shot as the viewers are drawn into the conversation that's about to take place. In the background, another extra takes a seat, and although this seems like a dismissive piece of information, it's actually important in allowing the viewer to edit the scene with the eye. Watching this conversation take place, our eyes naturally go from one character to the other. This is where the importance of the extra comes into play. Again, the triangle formation has been used by placing this extra in the center of the two characters in conversation. He acts as a go-to for the viewer's eyes, giving the audience a reason to shift their view from one character to the next, allowing us to cut the scene as we see it. Now when this nurse appears, not only is she framed in the corner of the screen, but our eyes are forced to look at her as every other character in the screen turns their attention in her direction. Automatically, we follow their eye line, and this creates somewhat of a medium shot, even though she is stood in the distance. As this character takes a seat beside the lead, our eyes naturally follow him as we watch the extra make his way after being called by the nurse. Here, Kurosawa has placed us in an over-the-shoulder as the character explains his condition. Now, all of a sudden, we've been placed in the lead character's shoes, as over his shoulder, we listen to this man talk. In a day and age where coverage is key to editing a scene, and the camera's movement at times is motivated only to prevent the audience from getting bored, this video was created to highlight that coverage doesn't necessarily mean 18 setups with varying focal lengths only to piece the scene together in post. Coverage and knowing how much to get and when, and more importantly how, like anything else in filmmaking, is a tool, and all tools have a specific purpose. But in the film world, not all tools are bound by the rules. You're probably wondering what this has to do with film editing, and my answer to that would be everything. Editors are storytellers, and to be a better editor is to be a better filmmaker. When shooting a scene the same way that an editor does, try building the scene upwards and only adding what's necessary, whether that be a line of dialogue or a camera shot. Now back to the scene. As this character's story grows in intensity, the lead character turns away from him, giving us a first glimpse of his reaction. This creates an imaginary medium shot as he draws closer to the camera. It's here where Kurosawa finally gives us a close-up of the main character. The tale being told by the patient is obviously worrying him, and clear now for the audience to see. With the two characters now facing the camera, we have two shots in one. Our eyes shift from one to the other due to the placement of each character within the composition, one being closer to the camera and quiet, while the one talking draws our attention with his words, even though he is slightly further away. Our eyes naturally cut between a close-up and a medium shot as this interaction takes place. As this character finally leans forward, we're drawn into a medium close-up to see his reaction to the distress of the lead. To finally place our full focus on the lead and his emotions, and remember a high percentage of scenes end on a close-up when using standard coverage, Kurosawa covers the other character's face with his newspaper. With nothing left to see on the screen but the lead's face, a close-up has been created as he is now the biggest, brightest focal point of the screen. This allows us to see the full extent of his emotion. Kurosawa covered this scene with 12 points of focal interest. There's at least 12 points of focus for our eyes to concentrate on throughout the entire scene, and Kurosawa has achieved this without cutting to another camera, without panning, without pushing in or pushing out. Kurosawa was the master of blocking and composition, and it's evident here in this scene as it is throughout his entire body of work. Kurosawa didn't always cover his scenes in this way, but he understood the art of covering a scene and how each setup should only be used if necessary. He also understood how to draw an audience into the scene by shifting our eyes to where he wanted us to look. This is filmmaking of the highest caliber. Don't force the audience to look where you want them to look, but guide them in interesting ways to where you want them to look, and your scenes will instantly and naturally become more dynamic.